They have been saying it for a long time about Trump. You know this. That they think that it's just a matter of time before number 45, President Trump, gets indicted and imprisoned, or at least spends a day or a few hours, an afternoon perhaps, at the police station. Gets fingerprinted. The mugshot more than any other that the libs wish to see. And I don't even think they would disagree with this. There's one person they want to see in handcuffs on the planet. Actually, Clay, I'm going to put this to you. Most libs. Donald Trump gets handcuffed, taken down to one police plaza, and, goes through the humiliation of being fingerprinted, etc. Or Vladimir Putin turned over to the International Criminal Court. Isn't that crazy, though?
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even close. I mean, they don't care. I mean, they might get on, Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever and talk about how much they hate Putin and how he's modern day Hitler. And if we don't stop him now in Ukraine, he's going to invade Poland next, or he's going to go into Belarus or whatever it is. They don't actually believe that, right? Like, that's just kind of like left-wing social justice warrior talking points. That is beyond a shadow of a doubt, I think, the case. They want desperately Trump in handcuffs, Trump facing the possibility of having to be fingerprinted and all of those aspects. That's what they desperately are after more than anything else. And so now the question I have is it going to be satisfying enough if he's just getting his picture taken? He's not going to prison over this, right?
So this is why, well, first off, just for like memory lane and to put this in context, before we get into the satisfaction of, this is almost like a parking ticket. I mean, I know they're saying it's a felony. The whole thing is so absurd. It would not survive appeal. And honestly, the New York State judicial system would not survive this if it didn't get overturned on appeal, because people realize, okay, so New York is now, it's a kangaroo court. It's absurd. It's show trials. You can't trust it. But here's 7 years, just so we can recall everybody. Oh, the walls around Trump are closing in. Play it.
The walls feel like they are closing in.
As the walls close in around the president.
Donald Trump feels the walls closing in.
I think this is a guy who feels like the walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in on him?
Because the walls are closing in.
The walls are closing in on the president.
Now the walls appear to be closing in.
Really kind of the walls closing in on him.
The walls are closing in because the walls are indeed closing in.
I think at this point, the walls are spinning.
The legal walls are closing in. The walls are closing in on President Trump.
The walls, meanwhile, are closing in on the President of the United States.
The walls closing in on President Donald Trump.
It appears that the walls are closing in on this president.
Feels that the walls are closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
The walls are closing in.
And the walls are closing in on.
That the walls are closing in on the president.
Are the walls closing in?
The walls are closing in on the presidency.
It says as the walls begin to close around him. The political walls closing in on him.
This is a president that feels the walls closing in.
The walls are closing in on Donald Trump.
I think the walls are finally closing in.
The walls.
The walls.
The walls.
The walls.
Walls and
the walls.
The walls. The walls.
Walls
are closing
in.
Closing in.
Closing in on.
It's closing in.
The walls are closing in on President Donald Trump.
He's not looking forward to any of it. He's horrified. He's just talking big. The walls are closing in, as has been said before.
Oh, that's amazing.
So
that's so good.
I mean, did anyone in the lib media not say that over and over again? Or, by the way, that was over the span, those sound bites, of 7 years. So think back to, there were people saying the walls were closing in 2016 in that clip, right? The walls are, but Clay, I know we're all buried in the rubble of their cliches. Fine. But beyond that, to your point, is this enough?
That's the thing.
I think what Julie Kelly said yesterday was really interesting about because again, remember, and we mentioned Andy McCarthy had this analysis of once you indict a former president, it feels like maybe other indictments not that big a deal. And if they get the Proud Boys or whoever this, I think it's the Proud Boys, right, that are specifically incitement to or insurrection, they're being charged with insurrection specifically. If they want to tie that to Donald Trump, what happens if Merrick Garland says, in the interest of justice, I have no choice but to charge Donald J. Trump with fomenting insurrection in an election year.
I don't think they can do it. And I don't think this is enough to make them sated. I do wonder this, Buck. What if Donald Trump had said, I'm 78 years old. As much as I think the country needs saving, I'm going to pass the baton to a younger generation and aggressively campaign for whoever is the nominee of the Republican Party. Would Democrats still be trying to charge him with crimes? I think the answer is yes, because they are so desperate to get that shot of him walking around in handcuffs or getting fingerprinted. And by the way, there's no guarantee that they're going to require him to put on handcuffs or anything else. And I think Trump would probably smile in his mugshot, right? Just to try. And then he would immediately, I'm betting, he would immediately put that smiling mugshot on coffee mugs, on T-shirts, and people would buy it and wear it, and it would work to his benefit. And I think that's the big question here. And I saw even people like, I don't know if you saw the headlines. I read this. I was like, it seems like an accurate. Chris Rock, who is not a political commentator necessarily, just had the comedy special, said, do Democrats not realize what they're doing here? They are playing completely into Trump by charging him with crimes here. The way to get Trump is to ignore him, which is why I wonder, like, who the puppet master might be. But charging Trump with crimes, Buck, seems like a desperate ploy to guarantee that he is the Republican nominee. Like if we were talking about somebody trying to play high-level chess, pulling the strings, the puppet master, as it were, it feels like the only play here is this is a ploy for Democrats to guarantee they get to go against Trump.
I'd be very curious, because with this audience, we know we have people that feel very passionately already about what they think the best pathway for the Republican Party and for the country is for 2024. For anyone who is already decided that they want to vote for Trump in the primary, and of course, anyone you vote for in the primary, you're voting for in the general, right? But if anyone who's already decided on that, do they think, or rather, do they agree with the pretty widespread feeling that's out there right now that you hear from a lot of different commentators that the Democrats want Trump, but their feeling about that is, and they're wrong, meaning, sure, they want Trump. The Democrats buy it in, the machine wants to run against Trump, but this time will be different. This time Trump, and without getting into how it would be different, right? I'm just saying, is Trump going to be president in 2024, even though Democrats want him? So I'd be curious to hear from anybody who has a strong opinion in this audience on that, because I haven't heard a lot of people make the argument that Democrats do not want it to be true.
Correct.
I haven't even heard Trump, the most diehard Trump supporters make that argument. So I'm curious what the thinking is there. And I also think that, Clay, the recognition among the Democrats right now that are involved in this possible process. Remember, there are multiple possible prosecutions. That's the other part of this, too. Georgia could theoretically come up with something first for, the election interference stuff with the recount demands, et cetera. So we could see them make, I think these are less legal considerations for the people making the decision than they are political considerations at this point. I think that's what the holdup is.
Yeah, and I think, to your point, Democrats would panic, insanely panic, if they found out that they weren't running against Trump and Biden was their guy. And what I mean by that is, in particular, to me, the strongest possible argument against Biden is his age. If you have to sit back and you're saying, why should Joe Biden not be reelected? He's been an awful president. But the idea that you would put an 82-year-old man who would finish his term at 86 in office is, I think, for independents, for people out there that are persuadable, the single greatest attack of Biden. Trump at 78 cancels that out. Right now, you can say Trump is far more candid, far more in control, doesn't have dementia. All those things are true. But if you had Ron DeSantis, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, somebody of a truly different generation on the stage with Biden in a debate, I think it would be impossible not to see that difference in intellectual capacity.
I was just watching, I have some of the cable channels on mute here in the studio, and I remember watching it yesterday after the show, and there was some Biden stuff. There's a lot of Biden stuff on TV, obviously, but just watching him and thinking, this is grotesque.
Yeah,
I mean, this situation of this man is, I mean, they've gone through extreme lengths, and I don't criticize people's appearance, and because I know they could all criticize mine, but just from a health and vitality perspective, they're doing everything they can to this guy's face, meaning, all kinds of manipulation and stuff, so that people just don't realize that this guy is physically and mentally ancient. It's not just the number, it's the wear and tear on his body. And that's why there's this puffiness and this mask and the whole thing. It's wrong, Clay. There's something really dishonest about just the whole presentation of Biden as up for this. You look at him, you go, this guy, he's not up for this at all.
He could barely walk. I mean, I've said this before on the show, but every time he goes to get on the military helicopter on the grounds of the White House, and you watch him walk across the lawn, I expect for him to fall. And I think at some point he may, just because he barely gets his feet off the ground. He shuffles. It's almost like he's sleepwalking. It's just, it's frankly unacceptable. And we've already seen it with John Fetterman. They just don't care. They don't care. Do whatever
That's
it takes.
the problem. They don't care.